Everyone with an interest in NASH, or more broadly, fatty liver disease, surfs up. Season 2, Episode 27, our preview of International NASH Day, starts now.
This week on Surfing the NASH Tsunami.
International NASH Day is so special to me because the Global Liver Institute was entrusted with this. This is our 4th year of International NASH Day, the 3rd year that GLI has been convening it. I made the case for why International NASH Day should belong to the patient advocacy community, that we could and should be the hub to move this day forward as a neutral platform. So there was a lot of pressure to make sure that we brought that to life, that we delivered on that. I really do think of it as very sacred trust on behalf of the entire global NASH community.
Wellness can help prevent the next pandemic. It can prevent the mortality. They've got a great role to play in the future development.
Using this as a platform to not only advocate for education around NASH, but around the comorbidities that exist within that sphere is a huge opportunity. As we expand through different languages into different cultures, this just becomes more and more a platform to disseminate that degree of information. And it's not just to doctors, it's to patients as well. Whether you're pharma or academic or a device manufacturer or a developer of non-invasive testing strategy or your Congress, you should all be getting behind International NASH Day because we're all going to benefit in delivering this message to our patients.
Every week, a global community of fatty liver disease stakeholders comes together to explore the most important challenges in diagnosing, treating, and developing medications for patients with fatty liver diseases. Join hepatology researcher and key opinion leader Dr. Stephen Harrison, liver wellness advocate Louise Campbell, pricing and forecasting guru Roger Green, and this week's guest, Global Liver Institute President and CEO Donna to preview International NASH Day, which will be Thursday, June 10th, today on the Surfing the NASH Tsunami podcast.
This is a big week at Surfing NASH. Donna Cryer is here to talk about International NASH Day 2021. It's always special when Donna joins us, kind of like getting the band back together. And this is extra special for 2 reasons. First of all, because IND is such a fantastic global event. And second, because both Stephen and Louise are playing a role this year. So we've got lots of ground to cover, not a ton of time. I want to make sure we get it all in. I want to start with the special International NASH Day icebreaker. The one thing that makes International NASH Day so special for each of you. Donna, I'm going to suggest that you go last because you can use that as the lead into your opening. So who wants to go first?
Oh, I'll jump in there. I think what makes International NASH Day particularly important this year is obviously the pandemic that we've had and the particular influence. But I'm really excited in the amount of languages that it's going out in and that real breadth of patients that we can now take this to so that we're involving so many more people. That really excites me about the day this year.
Yeah, and I would just say that having been a part of International NASH Day since its inception, just the excitement around the growth and expansion of the outreach and the ability that International NASH Day has to cause people to pause, reflect, introspect on where we are with NASH and blow disease awareness out the front door, I think, is what makes this day so special to me. And I can't wait to see what's in store for the rest of the world that is hearing it for the first time in all the different languages that Louise just mentioned.
I guess my comment's not that different. I was struck last year at the amazing energy and enthusiasm that this event brought to knowledge. It's easy to get people psyched up about emotion, but to turn knowledge into energy and to turn that energy into constructive force is really powerful. And to do that globally is really, really exceptional. And all I do is watch, although we're doing a podcast this year. But I think it's one of the best days of the year in the NASH community and certainly one that I look forward to for that reason. Okay, Donna. Why is it special to you?
International NASH Day is so special to me because the Global Liver Institute was entrusted with this. As Stephen pointed out, he was a part of this from the beginning. This is our 4th year of International NASH Day, the 3rd year that GLI has been convening it. I made the case. People say, Donna, you don't get to practice law anymore. And sometimes not only am I an advocate, but I do use those legal skills. And I made the case for why International NASH Day should belong to the patient advocacy community, that we could and should be the hub around around which the entire community and all the stakeholders coalesce to move this day forward as a neutral platform. So there was a lot of pressure to make sure that we brought that to life, that we delivered on that. And so the fact that it was entrusted to us and it has grown year over year, and that my vision for it and my promise for it has come to pass is why it is so special to me. And I really do think of it as very sacred trust on behalf of the entire global NASH community.
So tell us about what's going to make 2021 even more special than 2020.
I am so excited about this. I thought last year when we pivoted very quickly to make this a virtual event that it was special. And that allowed us to connect with so many clinicians and patient organizations and countries we hadn't reached yet at that point. And so this year is bigger and better. We have a more interactive conference platform for people to not only view the panels on, but to be able to engage with each other during the course of the day. We have an unprecedented number of medical societies endorsing International NASH Day. I am just humbled and honored by that AASLD endorsed this. Big thank you to Dr. Thomas Berg and the whole EASL governing board for endorsing us in this event. But we have 14 medical societies and counting at the time of this recording from all over the world who have come together to say this is our day collectively as a community, and that this content that the Global Liver Institute has put together is what we are all rallying behind. And that ability to unite the NASH community and talk with one voice, many perspectives, which is exciting, across 8 different panels, 30 speakers and things, many perspectives, which make the panels that I hope everybody will listen to really interesting, but one voice and one united mission to make NASH the center of the global public health conversation. So we have 8 panels with 30 panelists in 5 languages. So we'll have interpreters. It'll be in English, but then interpreters in Spanish, French, Mandarin, and Hindi. And as we grow bigger, we can add more languages, more interpretations. And, this podcast actually helped me with that. Talking to thought leaders who were like, I need information in Turkish about how to talk to my patients about NASH and clinical trials. I'm like, okay, Turkish. Our materials are in 14 languages, our NASH brochures and materials, but then all of the panels and things will be interpreted in the 5 languages. We will have, for the first time, a video from the perspective of 5 major medical societies talking about why International NASH Day and NASH itself and NASH patients are important. And we have a statement from the World Health Organization. I think that's something that all of us across the community have been asking for, that WHO recognize NASH. And so to have achieved that on behalf of the community is so exciting. And then there'll be a Meet the CEO things and meet our NASH director. If people want to talk to me, that'll be great. And I'm really excited about our first virtual culinary event. So we have a chef, Daniel Thomas, who is just fantastic. He's been a chef to the stars and to the senators, the baseball team senators, but, federal senators and cooking at the Capitol and for conventions and all sorts of events. And he's made a liver healthy menu. For those of us who have struggled to figure out what is a NASH healthy diet, there's going to have some very hands-on instructions for us. And he's teased me with some potential special guests I'm not even allowed to mention. It should be a really dynamic day. We're starting at midnight in Europe. So we'll have encore versions of some of the panels and events and the presentations so people in various time zones can connect with it. The GLI team now is in Washington, D.C. area, Rome, and in the UK. It was really important for us that we not think of this as an American event, although we're very proud of our U.S. NASH action plan and the events that we're doing in the United States, but that this is really a global event. And so starting the day in Central Europe time is just one indication of how international this event is. I don't know, if I check my emails, my team might have done something else because they keep inventing things. Oh, one last thing. Our NASH Around the World video. Since we recognize that people couldn't do sort of live events for the most part, like for the first IND, we've asked everybody to give us a sample of what NASH looks like in their country, in their community, in their practice. And so many people have responded to that. So I look forward to giving the world a glimpse into what NASH Around the World looks like.
Louise, since you know a little bit about what NASH looks like 12 or 13 hours away from Donna and me, at least, when you hear NASH Around the World, what do you think of?
I just love watching Donna's excitement there. I know people listening can't see that, but I think you can get a sense from your voice how exciting it is. And I think that to me is the sort of power that getting something up and running like this, and as well as it's done, achieves. But I think NASH around the world, to me, looks like nothing's set. Everybody's a different phenotype. Everybody is different. If you look at, I've got a passion for trying to target Aboriginal health at some stage, and due to the pandemic and me working at the EASL, I haven't been able to bring Australia online this year, but I am hoping that we will get there. But with obesity in high-risk populations, South Pacific Islanders throughout, obviously recently highlighted in one of the studies we discussed, NASH looks like everybody, and everybody looks like NASH. But if we're not looking for it, which is why it's really exciting to have the WHO really on board, because of course it's behind a lot of the major NCDs that they target that are stalling. NASH looks like everybody, and everybody looks like NASH would be my answer to that.
Donna, if there was one panel that you wanted our listeners who are industry people to catch, which one would it be and why?
I believe that there is something of value in all 8 panels. NASH as a global public health challenge is unique because of the participation of WHO for the first time, which distinguishes it. Ray Chung, the president of AASLD, a board member of AASL, a board member of EASL, all together. And that has never happened before. So that's really a unique event and panel. I'll also say that this morning, as of, when we're recording this podcast, we just pre-recorded the Beyond the Biopsy Innovations in Diagnostics panel. And a good time was had by all, I'll just say, with Dr. Thomas Berg, Vlad Ratsu, with Quentin Anstey, and it was lightly moderated because they had a lot to discuss between themselves. I would say those two, and Zubair Younasi also, set the tone for me on the Global Public Health Channel one. And so I think to give context for people new to this or wanting to wrap the entire and sort of touch on all the issues, that one perhaps. But NASH and liver cancer is really profound because you recognize that treating NASH, like vaccinating for hepatitis B, curing hepatitis C, is a cancer prevention strategy. And if anybody thinks that we shouldn't be addressing NASH early, or there's a lack of urgency around treating NASH, they need to listen to that NASH and liver cancer conversation, because who wants to be responsible for letting people progress to developing cancer unnecessarily? So that's really important. NASH and obesity, NASH and diabetes, we've talked so much on this podcast about the return on investment of looking at patients with type 2 diabetes and obesity in particular for fatty liver disease and NAFLD. And the statistics on increase in diabetes over the course of the pandemic were astounding as presented on that panel. And of course, the flip side of that is NASH in lean individuals. So what is our understanding of that? Is it the same disease? Is it a different disease? That's a fascinating conversation. And then we had this unique opportunity with the Association of Black Gastroenterologists and Hepatologists to do a panel focused on issues of health equity. And so I handed the mic over to Dr. Carr, the University of Pennsylvania, who's on the board of the Association of Black Gastroenterologists and Hepatologists. And I'm really so excited that we could add that panel this year. You spent enough time with me and Team GLI to know my answer to everything is all and now. So all, you watch all panels at least once and register now. And that's my answer to which panel is most important. All of them.
Just personally, I am registered already. And one of the nice things about something I never knew until I started this podcast is if you do it long enough, somebody decides you're a journalist and then they send you everything in advance. So you get to listen on your own time instead of with everybody else, which is a good thing. Louise, you have a question? I've got a bunch, but...
I think it's very exciting to get the Black community involved. And I think we've talked a little bit recently about how badly affected Hispanics are in the data. Did you consider putting a Hispanic angle on that or in as a select population? Because, of course, that's bigger in the US than it is specifically here.
Absolutely. And we're so excited that we have membership from Hispanic medical associations and organizations within our NASH Council. And we have been working with the Mexican liver group as well to infuse some of our publications. And it's one of the reasons why Spanish was the first, if no other language, we knew we needed to have it translated into Spanish, and all of our materials were translated first into Spanish. Also, as part of this, we've been able to give community grants, and many of them are for groups or outreach to Hispanic communities. So it is definitely something that, particularly in the NASH and obesity and some of the other NASH and obesity panels, we do dig into that particular propensity.
So one of the things I was delighted to hear you say, although I knew this before the podcast, was that the fifth language you mentioned was Hindi, in part because that's reflective of what the world's population speaks, in part because the Indian government is taking a pretty aggressive stand on NASH relative to the rest of the world, and in part because, as Samir Gowrie pointed out on this podcast last week or 2 weeks ago, I forget which, PMPLA3 is a marker, and he then systematically said, if you think about the populations with heavy PMPLA3, Hispanics, Aboriginals, AAPIs, and South Asians, I'm almost visualizing the need for a PMPLA3, not caucus, if you will, but event. Is that a different way of thinking about this? Or are you doing anything around the genetics this year?
I love that. It has been mentioned on several panels. As a former board member of the Personalized Medicine Coalition, I would love nothing better than to do that. And it's also why the other night I spent time on the Harvard Asian Alumni Alliance call about COVID in India, and then we ended up talking about COVID throughout Asia. And I wanted to listen. I wanted to listen to people directly affected, people directly working on the ground, my classmates throughout the Asian and API diaspora, to understand what they would want people to do about it rather than parachuting in. So I think that with the connections that we continue to make each year through International NASH Day, then the challenges and why we always talk about scaling to meet the need is then being able to follow up the other 364 days of the year to really see how we can pull through and how we can work directly in country to improve health and to drive solutions. And so certainly with India, we are in active planning on partnering with organizational infrastructure on the ground in India to be able to help these dual challenges of COVID and NASH and other liver diseases. So we look forward to that.
So Stephen, as someone who's been involved with this program for a long time, what makes you most excited about 2021 that we've not gotten to yet? What are the program elements that you find most intriguing? And, well, stay there. I'll ask you two questions at once instead of three.
I like the signature that Donna and her team are putting on International NASH Day. You know, it's getting the attention it deserves. And I'm not meaning the day is getting the attention. So I'm talking about the time, energy, and effort that it takes to put together something on this scale of this magnitude with this degree of emphasis is not something that, is trivial. It takes an incredible amount of effort and teamwork and thought and cohesiveness to do. And there probably aren't very many people that could pull that off the way Donna and her team have. If you just look at the number of symposia, if you will, that have been pre-recorded and will be ready for NASH Day from a wide range of key opinion leaders in the field spanning multiple different fields of expertise, I think just speaks to that a little bit. And just thinking about where this can go and how it could advance the field is mind-boggling. I mean, just this notion that you were mentioning about genetic risk, as we begin to develop polygenic risk scores for this disease, to really get after that at-risk population, and not just the at-risk population for NASH, but the at-risk population for rapidly progressive NASH, and the at-risk population for HCC development, hepatocellular carcinoma development, that's huge. And speaking of hepatocellular carcinoma, we know the link to liver cancer is very clear, it's very evident, and that doesn't get enough press either. So using this as a platform to not only advocate for education around NASH, but around the comorbidities that exist within that sphere, the penumbra, if you will, around NASH, to include hepatocellular carcinoma amongst other problems, is a huge opportunity. As we expand through different languages into different cultures, this just becomes more and more evident and a platform to disseminate that degree of information. And it's not just to doctors. It's to patients as well, whether you're pharma or you're academic or your industry. In another vein, maybe you're a device manufacturer or a developer of non-invasive testing strategy, or you're Congress. You should all be getting behind International NASH Day, because we're all going to benefit at the end of the day in delivering this message to our patients and getting them the workup that they need to determine their risk. And as we develop drugs for this disease, we'll be able to target those patients more directly. So it's all part of the process, but it starts with disease awareness. You could have the best therapy on the planet for a disease, but if you can't identify the patients or the patients don't come forward, It does us no good.
First of all, Stephen, thank you so much. And my team will rejoice in the recognition. It does take a village that's sort of underestimated to put how much time and how far in advance and how many people are part of this to pull all of it together as it expands. And, one of the things I'm most excited about is our commitment to creating shareable, bite-sized versions of the content that's being created to be able to be pulled through in social media or other websites. We have a growing number of media partnerships, to your point, in oncology with various oncology magazines and websites like blackdoctor.org that communicate more directly with different minority communities. And so as we can not only create this content, but really be thoughtful and have the staff available to cut it and repurpose it and really fully leverage it and amortize it over every type of platform and way that we can get it to people. And you're right, primary care physicians is a key audience for us, endocrinologists, certainly we have an action plan for, as well as nurses and gastroenterologists, and certainly supporting all of our beloved friends in hepatology who, certainly we don't want to have to.
Come on, don't forget us.
I don't forget you. I just want to make sure you are not swamped with this tsunami of NASH patients, that there is a whole clinical army that is diverse and multidisciplinary waiting and ready to support you, because hepatology can't do this alone. And there aren't enough hepatologists. We definitely want to make more. I talk to every medically interested child who passes my way, and I'm like, don't you want to be a hepatologist?
At the end of the day, they really want to be. They really want to be a hepatologist. Deep down inside, in places sometimes people don't want to talk about.
I'm sure that's right, Stephen. And Donna never needs validation from me on anything, but I will tell you that this is the third conversation I've been in the last week. Donna wasn't in either of the other two, and either of you folks, about the need to distribute care and diagnosis and screening, because the hepatology community couldn't absorb everything that's going to come out if we're really successful.
I think maybe we could learn something, therefore, from the dementia care, because they have the dementia-linked nurses. Here we have admiral nurses, and whereby people own it themselves and disseminate that information, because we don't have enough hepatologists, we certainly don't have enough nurse specialists within liver disease, and we know how difficult it is to nurse a liver patient on the ward if you don't know encephalopathy. There's all sorts of intrinsic problems. And when Donna and Stephen and yourself were talking, it's about the excitement of the subjects also that aren't available on the day, like women with NASH, the development of postmenopausal NASH, all of the other realms that are just so intrinsic to these diseases. Medication-induced fatty liver. We never really get to have platforms for that. And I think
that's why we have GLI Live.
Yeah.
Every week. So I'm like, you are a fantastic producer and idea generator. We were putting you on the IND 2022 planning committee.
Well, I'm more than happy to help. I've thrown my penneth worth in, as you know. It's just so unique. There are very few diseases that just have so many jigsaw pieces where everything could fit into different places, and it's a stellar lineup. And we obviously have the cult and the hostess of the cult with Vlad and that from Beyond the Biopsy, so I'm really wanting to listen to, but it's bringing all of those areas together. It's great.
I think calling Donna a hostess of the cult doesn't give her nearly enough credit. I might go for high priestess. I might go for a spiritual overseer. I go a few different ways on this, but far more than hostess.
Thank you, I think.
So the other thing, Donna, that strikes me, has always struck me about liver, is that they say in B school, and I happen to have gotten an MBA at one point, that people do what's inspected, not what's expected. And the lack of really good liver testing has made this a harder thing for people to treat than other areas where they've got numbers where they know exactly what the number is, even if they're not sure what it means, like cholesterol. What will happen during the day or otherwise to help shine the light on how to help docs, particularly non-hepatology docs, understand that by treating the liver, they're doing the right thing and they're getting to a better place?
We addressed that on several of the panels, and also, excitingly, that message of get screened. So if our theme is NASH around the world, our call to action certainly is to get screened. And my understanding is that will be on several billboards and stock exchanges around the world. So be on the watch for that. And then what does get screened mean? We go into on some of the panels, and we try to make it as simple as possible, but it's a complex issue, as we all know.
So if this year is expanding exponentially from last year and the year before, and this year's theme is NASH around the world, next year, are you planting a flag on the moon, going to Mars? What's the plan?
Hey, there's a Space Force now, and so who knows?
I mean, I think you could get NASH en route to Mars if you have to be confined for 3 months. So who knows? I can just envision, if you're putting this on the New York Stock Exchange message board, where are we likely to see the little logo for International NASH pop up? You're going to have like a Geico equivalent lizard kind of guy. What are we doing?
Yeah, so I'd like to see the White House maybe in Burgundy by fall for October, certainly in recognition of all liver health issues. I would love to have more, and we've talked about this a little bit, Roger, of having more I&D merchandise and setting up an e-commerce store. But most importantly, I think I'd like some recognizable people, more recognizable than us, in all due respect, to be wearing that logo, to be wearing those t-shirts. We have a calling all celebrities. And at this point, I define them as if you have seen a red carpet. I'll count you as a celebrity. I'm not going to quibble about Nielsen ratings or what streaming network your show is on. If you have a connection to NASH or liver disease, or just love a NASH patient or a liver patient, you are welcome to come to GLI and be ambassador spokesperson. I often talk about what made a difference in the HIV/AIDS community with Elizabeth Taylor and her embrace of Rock Hudson. And so I think of like that Elizabeth Taylor moment and the Elton John moment. So we haven't really been fortunate in having someone, and I understand, there's so much stigma around liver diseases as a whole. Chronic liver disease has so much stigma, and NASH certainly does, but we need someone to step up and really help to put a face around this and help us reduce the stigma so more people come forward to get tested, to be in care, and to embrace this issue. So yeah, other ideas of what we should do next. Louise, your panel ideas, I'm writing them all down. And Stephen, I thank you for raising my sights and my ambitions for this.
Well, it's interesting. On the first World Hepatitis Day, we did a virtual balloon race. And these balloons went all the way around the world. Mm-hmm. And we had them in different countries. Mm-hmm. And you had your balloon and you chased it and you did a quiz to send it, and you got more air and faster. Mm-hmm. And it was really quite funny. I don't know how we organised it. We had loads and loads of countries and loads of teams involved. And we gave an iPad or something, or a small gift for whoever won at the end. But it certainly generated way more attention for hepatitis than we would have done sitting in a foyer, just hitting people that walk past. I think we got over 2,000 balloons sent round.
I think as the world opens up next year, we'll certainly have more options again. One thing that we would like to build between, this year and next, of course, is more digital engagement. So certainly as we are giving through this virtual culinary event, some active hands-on lessons in, how to eat and, options, are there ways that people can pull down those recipes or that guidance and interact? Is there a digital sort of patient-facing app that we could, develop that better tracks NASH and other liver symptoms and how people are progressing in, their care plan and the intervention? So I think that there's a lot that we could do in terms of supporting patients with NASH in their day-to-day after this, and also understanding how to serve them better and create different programs through the generation of data. And I certainly think at our patient-focused drug development meeting and the survey that's out for that, we will get the beginnings of some of that information of where we can be useful providing those types of direct tools through digital means.
Okay, I'm having an aha moment.
Okay.
And maybe you've already had it, but at least it's worthwhile having it. Have you considered using your power and influence through your organization to reach out to lifestyle intervention businesses like Planet Fitness, Lifetime Fitness, some of these national fitness organizations, gyms, CrossFit brands, to just advocate for that one day, put flyers, information in the gyms for that one day to advocate for this. And, the selling point would be, hey, you might get more business as a result of discussing liver disease and its consequences when not mitigated through lifestyle modification. Take it one step further. Could you go to Jenny Craig, Weight Watch, and do the same thing for that one particular day and really just kind of see how many of these we can leverage?
I absolutely think we can do that. And we have started to some degree. And I know that my shameless daily plugs about my Pelotoning are only the tip of the iceberg for that. But I do think that everybody who's listening to this podcast will realize that it takes people to make the calls, to design the outreach. That's where the staffing comes in. And considering that 2 years ago, we were just 4 people at GLI, and and now we're more, but it's more to do these things, to meet the needs of the community. And my NASH communications manager got stolen by the new administration, so I wish her well in her new thing, but that's exactly the type of job that we would have her do as we backfill that position. Reaching out to the non-pharma brands in the health and wellness space is absolutely how we see our growth and a way to expand the awareness of this and provide tangible support for people's journey.
The world should come together to prevent the next pandemic causing what it's done this time by health and lifestyle can help healthcare, because healthcare is a reaction to illness. It's not as proactive as it should be because we've never started on that foot. The real ability, as Stephen says, wellness can help prevent the next pandemic. It can prevent the mortality. They've got a great role to play in the future developments. And obviously I come more from a let's look early, find and change. You never should develop liver disease in a lot of areas and conditions. That's exactly where the lifestyle and wellness, I still come across people going, I only thought I had 2 of those and I never realised it was there.
Yeah, so we do have to start with the basics. You have one, it is here and you can't do without it. But we did have a fantastic conversation with Dr. Stein out of Penn State Liver Center and NASH and exercise research, and have gone back and forth about, what we would need to understand about research and exercise in this field. We developed some patient-generated questions and sent it this way. And so I look forward to collaborating on some research studies on the type of exercise, the frequency of exercise, the intensity of exercise that would make a difference in NASH, and what type of information would really help someone want to get engaged. If you knew that you were a super responder to exercise, I'm like, okay, then I'm exercising. Are there questions like that we can answer? Is lean body mass a better predictor of fibrosis decrease than BMI or something? Those are the types of additional areas of research that we'd like to emphasize in this field.
And I suppose following on from Stephen's point there, major corporations, occupational health and wellness of their own employees now is taking a higher profile. And obviously NASH and NAFLD particularly are rising in those populations. If I look at the mining industry in Australia, they got a 60% rise in diabetes, heart disease and hypertension. Trucking industry, sedentary jobs, they're all on the increase. So if we're looking after our own staff, we should be wearing your NASH Day t-shirts.
Yeah, I think that's right. And one of the thoughts I had listening to Stephen's question, and now to yours, Louise, is that one of the fastest ways to destigmatize the disease for people is to have their employer say, there's nothing wrong with this, and we want to help the world. And if you're one of our people and you have this, we want to help you. But that's because we want to help everybody because there's nothing wrong with having this. I think that winds up being a gateway through which to make that happen. We're running kind of close to the end of our time. So let me ask Donna, what one other message do you want to leave folks with? And then I have a wrap-up question for everybody, including you.
I just want everybody to register to see this, and so they can participate in it and get the benefit of what my team has worked so hard to put together, what organizations and partners around the world have worked so hard to put together. So I appreciate you putting the registration link in the show notes and on the website for this podcast and on the Facebook page and everything like that, and helping people reach this information.
So just to let everybody know, we will also be back right after the Celebrity Chef event on June 10th with an assortment of folks from a lot of different backgrounds to talk about GLI's U.S. Action Plan and the role that different individuals and groups can play in that as well. So that's going to be our last piece of that day. So going around, Louise, Stephen, then me, then Donna, or then Donna, then me. The one thing you want to see in 2022 as a way that this program should expand itself?
Oh, I think I commented on mine. It's the role of NASH in women as we go menopausal, the role of tamoxifen and other drugs and hormones that women go on that can cause fatty liver and that whole polycystic ovary disease. And so the intrinsic things that are solely women related, I suppose.
Okay, you ready for this?
Right.
You know how you go to the restaurant and they won't have a menu for you, but they'll have the QR code? Mm-hmm. I want you to have a QR code that everybody can just take their phone, do it, and you get the International NASH Day details and what's going on with links to whatever they want, lifestyle modification, more education, where they can go to be evaluated, all that through a QR code.
I can get you a QR code tomorrow. Where would you like to put it?
Well, one place I'd like to put it is on our website, so please get it to me.
Okay.
I've got two, I guess, although I lost one of them while I was listening to Stephen. One of them is the idea of having a lot more corporate sponsors from even outside of health base, literally with the message that goes, we're here to help our employees, because I think corporations are realizing that they are the most effective way to fight everything that's going retrograde in the society right now, and that would be one of them. The second is it would really would be great. These might exist. I don't know about them. If there were a much broader set of podcasts in a lot more languages that were accessible every week on this subject, and I'm not promoting myself to go do all that because I think you need to speak the language to do the podcast, but just to try to take communication into more grassroots kind of levels and in more grassroots ways would I think be a fantastic thing to see next year.
Yeah, I think as we certainly are partner organizations in different countries, and in the same way that we have been developing, and more news to come on our developments in the United States with our grassroots effort in building out our GLI affiliates in other countries besides the U.S. I think thinking through what's the best way to communicate in those countries, radio, podcasts, what have you, is a fabulous idea.
Okay, so Donna, thank you so much for joining us today, and Stephen and Louise, and taking this opportunity for us to celebrate this fantastic event. June 10th, we've got as much information as we can get up on our website and our various locations, except we will have the QR code tomorrow as well for people who like to do things that way. And I'll get to business after everybody signs off and after we move on. Donna, Louise, Stephen, thank you so much. This ends today's episode. Next week, we will be back with our first preview episode for EASL's Digital ILC. We'll put out more information about this during the coming week. Also, this week, we are putting out a special episode about the aldafermin discontinuation and what it means for the industry, providers, patients, everybody. Be sure to catch it. It's episode 27. It should be coming out Wednesday or Thursday.
October may be for livers, but at Surfing NASH, June is for meetings.
Here at Surfing NASH, June will be for meetings. As I mentioned when the surfers were here, Global Liver Institute's International NASH Day is coming on June 10th, kicking off at midnight in Paris and ending at 7 o'clock in the eastern U.S. We will be going live with our episode after the wrap-up, which is a spectacular cooking class with award-winning celebrity chef and cookbook author Daniel Thomas. That starts at 6 p.m. and ends, I believe, at 7. We will be going up at 8 o'clock that night. You should have our podcast before you go to sleep. Also, June, for the Digital International Liver Conference, we will have a preview episode for that, one that will drop next week, one that will drop 2 weeks after that, and then we'll be covering days 2, 3, and 4 of the conference, and a follow-up episode. The dates on that will be June 24, 25, 26, and 28. Stay tuned for more details on that. We're very, very excited about what we're going to be announcing about that conference.
Welcome home to everyone who was away from the podcast for a month or so.
For those of you who were away, welcome back, and thanks for rebounding our attendance yet another week. We're now back at our February-March levels without the benefit of many special events to boost us. If you haven't listened to episodes 25 and 26, you're missing something really special. 25 is a game-changing paper and a pivotal story, and 26 is an interesting look at escalation and de-escalation of drug therapy. You'll want to hear it before you listen to episode 27, because some of the concepts we'll be talking about with aldafermin are discussed in that paper first. Finally, and as always, I want to thank our exceptional team, Magic Mike Wilson. We keep putting through more paces every week. We find new ways to make his life challenging, and he finds ways to deal with it. Eric Rounds, who does our social media, Paula Teale, who makes sure that we get our conversations and our midweek stuff out, and all of you folks who come and listen every week and send comments and questions and make all this worth doing. So with that, I wish everyone in the Northern Hemisphere a continuing beautiful spring, and hope it doesn't get too hot and too summery too fast. Those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, a continually pleasant autumn, and hope it doesn't get too cold and wintry too fast. We all pray for India and everywhere else in the world that is still wrestling with the scourge of this pandemic. And for the rest of you, if you haven't been vaccinated yet, get sure to do so. It really makes a difference. Stay safe, surf on. We'll see you next week on the podcast. Bye-bye now.
Have any questions for the surfers? You can send them to questions@surfingnash.com, and we will answer on the discussion boards or our website. Please make sure to listen to this week's other episode, What We Can Learn from the Aldafermin F2-F3 Discontinuation, and join us next time on Wednesday, June 2nd, for our first preview of this year's annual EASL meeting, the Digital International Liver Congress, right here on Surfing the NASH Tsunami.